Hey, everybody, stop me if you've heard this before. Jimmy Kimmel's in trouble with the FCC, and people are calling for his head. That's just one of the topics we're talking about today. We've also got John Riccitiello, the former EA and Unity head, talking about the future of games now that he's busy bending metal at Gratz, the Pilates equipment maker, and just a few other quick things we'll get into here on Next TMT Talks. I'm co-founder David Bloom with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, talking all things technology, media, and telecom. So, Dan, let's get started. Since apparently this is the thing we talk about after we have a gunman take a literal run at the president at the correspondence dinner, and there's an opportunity to beat up on Jimmy Kimmel, who beats up on Trump pretty regularly, for the fake correspondence dinner that he had days before that made a joke about Melania Trump, who's much younger than D. Trump, having expectant widow face in a divorce. That was terrible. So we must review the diversity, equity, and inclusion provisions of Disney's owned and operated broadcast stations.
It'd be ashamed if we had to look at your DEI. You wouldn't want that to happen, would you?
Wouldn't want that to happen.
Thank our partners at Media Play News. This is our midweek check-in that goes into their publication.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I am up here in San Francisco. As you can see, this is the view from the street corner outside the Italian consulate, which has been there since the 1950s and is a pretty gorgeous view of Marin County across San Francisco's narrow channel into the San Francisco Bay. But yes, Media Play News, our partners in the midweek edition, and we are glad to have them. I've been remiss, distracted. Anyway, this Jimmy Kimmel thing, what do you think? What's your take?
What's my take? Well, I think we discussed this. It seems like a distraction from, we're not talking about Iran. We're not talking about Epstein. We're not talking about the gas prices. We're talking about Jimmy Kimmel again. So it's one distraction.
So much better to talk about that than war or pedophiles or whatever.
It's not like
or a bad economy. Like who wants to talk about those things? Let's talk about expectant widows looks.
Right. Like it's not even an off-color joke. When it was told, it was talking about a woman who looks miserable most of the time around a man who's going to be 80 next month or soon.
Showing some signs of perhaps cognitive decline.
Majority of Americans don't trust this man. They don't like this man. Jimmy Kimmel appeals to that audience. Over-the-air broadcasting uses the First Amendment. If you like the president and support him, then he's not speaking to you, and you can watch something else. I watch the FCC under the auspices of Trump, Brendan Carr, kind of try to manufacture, goose up these cases. We need to save broadcasting and keep the NFL from practicing free market economics because we need to save local news. If you wanted to save local news, you'd have done something 30 years ago. That stuff has been on the way down for...
Or spent more money on local news. Hey, there's an idea. That's weird, but there's an idea. So instead of just reaping pretty high profit margins for decades as station owners,
listen,
what do I know?
I do think that the winning media company in all this that's going to be on the right side of history, that's going to profit the most, is the one that makes an uncomfortable stand now. And we had talked about, it's not new. It's about 9 months old. Laura Martin, the Needham analyst, said, I don't see economically how it benefits Disney to stay in free over-the-air broadcast. Their future's in streaming, and just pick up the tent and leave. If Nexstar, Sinclair, and the rest of them feel like they don't need ABC's woke programming, well, you don't have to have it. What happens?
And how much is your broadcast network? I mean, how much is your broadcast station worth without, I don't know, Abbott Elementary on it and the NBA and the NFL? That is one of the key, I won't call it flies in the ointment, in her very entertaining suggestion that also makes a lot of sense, that I think will make a lot more sense in about 5 years, right?
In about 5 years.
For now,
I do believe if we survive this thing and we have a new Democrat, to use the majority of government, or Republican government, whatever it is, that's not this one, that respects the system and respects law and order and respects free market economics like we have them with some controls. The company that didn't put up with this and made a bold stand will look pretty good.
Probably. I think that history will treat some kinder than others. I'm fascinated to see how this one plays out. I think it feels very familiar because it literally was Jimmy Kimmel said a bad thing. It really didn't seem like it was that bad last summer that led to the Laura Martin suggestion. I mean, her point was just take all your programming, move it to ABC.com and Disney.com and Disney Plus / Hulu, if however
Right.
long Hulu survives, and the ESPN app. Right? There's two things there that are worth thinking about. One is what's the NFL think about all this if you do it? You know, if they're going to sit there and say, we're going to go after your broadcast exemption, it's like, or in your antitrust exemption, if you endanger free broadcast over there, say, well, we just gave 5 games free to access over YouTube. It was behind a cable paywall. We're being good citizens. What do you want? Oh, it's just bullshit. Okay, right. All right. That's the way it goes. I think that's a big one. You know, there's still money to be made in broadcast, but less and less. And again, 5 years from now, walking away won't seem like that big a deal, particularly if they're still trying to find places to get spectrum for low Earth orbit satellites. Entirely possible something like this becomes a target. In that
I don't have the specifics. Laura did. She had all the immediate costs that are involved with such a transition. It's obviously a complex one with a number of costs and opportunities and variables based on strategy. But yeah, I mean, your partners are getting the same heat. You're speaking of the NFL. The NBA hasn't, but maybe these are talks that are ongoing. I don't know. I mean, it seems to make sense to me. It's an unnecessary.
Right, Roger Goodell is already reopening NFL contracts ahead of a 2030, was it 2031, I think, expiration date?
2029.
Well, no, the 2029 was the look-in provision, but I think maybe it was 2033. So 2033 from 2026 feels like a really long time away in terms of potential opportunities for transformation of how we get our entertainment delivered to us, right? It's like, what's that even going to look like? I mean, so in some ways, if somebody like Josh D'Amaro, the new guy, so the other thing I wanted to get into was, there's a lot of takes on this is Josh D'Amaro's first challenge. Like, no, it's not. First week he's there, he says we're laying off 1,000 people in some key areas that are kind of fading, like home entertainment marketing, but not selling a lot of DVD steelbooks anymore. So we're going to pull back on some of that. So he was already beginning to shape some of the company's focus going forward. They've already put $60 billion down to build out more of their experience and stuff, all the things that Josh oversaw for the last 7 years. And clearly the in-person experience is more valuable to Disney than content that can be mocked up and faked and generated for very little money on the interwebs. But D'Amaro is the guy to make this decision. It was not going to be Bob Iger, who started out as a weatherman in local broadcast and made his way up, obviously, and had one of the great runs of any CEO in the last 30 or 40 years. But he was not the guy to say, we're no longer doing broadcast, because it's in his DNA. But D'Amaro, he can look at this, I think, pretty cold-bloodedly and go, not going to be core to us going forward, and we need to position ourselves for the long term. So between the NFL and what they may be thinking, given Rupert Murdoch's run at them, and that's what it is, and D'Amaro's lack of relationship in any way whatsoever to the broadcast stations, who are now just making his life annoying, this gets interesting a little bit, I think.
I've indicated this before. I don't really understand the profound emotional attachment that broadcasters have to sending the signal over the air. I mean, you're still like marketing.
Well, they've been doing it for 80 years. That's part of it.
I mean,
70.
That's callow to say, but the allegiance to just the format and the kind of inability to imagine doing it a different way. And it just.
Well, but I mean, in their defense, and this is a very small defense, it's not that different from the guy who spent 30 years working for a newspaper and can't imagine communicating text-based information in any way other than on a piece of paper that is printed on and output into a truck and delivered to somebody's home the next morning. They can't think of themselves as anything other than a newspaper person, as opposed to a journalist who does text-based reporting that shows up in people's cell phones minutes after you hit publish, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the things you do are different from the ways they get conveyed. It shapes some of what you do in terms of the context of the pipeline, but it's not what you do. So that's, I think, part of the issue.
Let's talk about Abbott Elementary or Monday Night Football over broadcast. So most of people get it through a pay TV provider at this point. They get still.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. Broadcast is about 15 million homes.
Right.
Straight, only broadcast over the air. It's about 15 million homes. The last estimate I saw a month ago. There are lots of people who get some over the air stuff, but they get a cable package. They get stuff, through broadband piped into their home. That's how they do it, right? So overwhelmingly, people that who actually care to get TV, which is still not 100% of America, I believe, but it's actually true. But of the 100 million, 105 million homes that get it, of some kind, from some direction, most get it either from a cable package or through the interwebs. So
Now, Disney divides, it acquires and negotiations for sports rights under the ESPN banner. And
right,
some of the content is shared with ABC, the premier content, where they want the biggest tent possible, right?
right, right.
So you're talking about 15 million homes is the size of that outside that tent.
Basically, that's the ones outside the tent. Yeah, well, that's not inconsequential. That's a fair number of houses, but
It's not.
it's not. I mean, some of that's folks who have decided to live in places that are not easily accessible by a pipe laid in the ground. I mean, a cable, coax cable, or a fiber connection, or even now, I mean, again, low Earth orbit satellites, the thing that Elon talks a lot about, now Jeff Bezos talks a lot about with Blue Origin. Those low Earth orbit providers have enough bandwidth to perhaps provide a pretty good example. DirecTV is still there, however limping along it might be. I don't think there's much left of EchoStar, but they do have a few customers left. There are ways to get TV, if you want it, through a variety of pipelines that are not dependent on broadcast.
And how much of the ad community says we want to reach the audience through linear broadcast? Less and less. But
Well,
anyway,
I think it's less and less just because that audience tends to be pretty old, older than me, which is old, like really old. It tends to be old, and they're not the ones that are going out forming affiliations with specific brands on their way up as they're building households and all that stuff. So there's definitely a market, can't be discounted. It certainly matters,
right.
but it ain't what it used to be. And it's not that big. And at a certain point, it's just going to matter less and less.
Last question for you. What is is it a PR hit? Obviously, it'll be spun by the FCC and policymakers as Disney ABC abdicating and abandoning the free over the air, the consumer, basically sticking it to the
Yeah,
consumer.
people are going to believe what they're going to want to believe. Like they're going to say their thing. Maybe their case is undercut by their own actions a little bit, at least with anybody who kind of sits in the middle, which is increasingly most of America. They're crying fake news about everything except the things that serve them tends to undercut their believability. That being said, there are people to believe them no matter what, and that's just what that's going to be. So you take your hit. What, you're not going to go to Disneyland? You're not going to take your kids there? Maybe you're not, or maybe this will blow over and you can say, "Oh, I'll watch it on YouTube," which is probably much more likely, or
Talk about
YouTube TV.
the FCC, Brendan Carr, just for a second. Other agents, even Pam Bondi, some of Trump's demands, she was like, yeah, we'll get it done. And she would slow walk them, investigations of certain people that she couldn't produce a case for.
Or she didn't have a prosecutor in that district that actually could bring the case, but
Right.
minor detail.
There were limits to what she would deliver. With Mama's boy, Brendan, it's just like, whatever you want, no matter how unreasonable. And this case looks really unreasonable.
I think it's Papa's boy. He's not really a mama's boy. It's not like he's doing what Melania wants. He's doing what Daddy wants, Daddy Trump.
Sure. Whatever you call him, his
he is a Nepo baby, though. He's a Nepo baby in Washington, which is not the same as like Kate Hudson, Goldie Hawn's daughter.
Powell and a bunch of other former heads of the FCC are talking about maybe it's not such a great idea to have him around.
Well, great, fine. I think Trump has to fire all of his female cabinet members first. It seems like he starts with the women, fires all of them, and then he'll start with some of the boy clowns. It's kind of how Daddy Trump likes to do it.
It doesn't feel like Michael Powell's, or I'm sorry, Brendan Carr's in danger at all. It feels like he's
look, he's loyal. responsive, aggressive in stating the case for the Trump. I don't see him as being obvious. You hear plenty of stuff about Kash Patel right now. That Atlantic article that he's now sued over was apparently accurate. We'll see how that goes. But, having a guy who's technically your FBI director, but spending his time in Las Vegas at the Poodle Room, which is a lovely place, by the way, in the Fontainebleau Hotel, which is a great hotel, but not where I want my FBI director to be holding court most
Yeah, he goes
weekends
there, like, according to the Atlantic, regularly. I mean, he's
regularly.
on the plane
He's
right after.
like a he's like a lead poodle of the pack. But anyway, regardless of that, Kash Patel's vulnerable. There's a few others. We just lost the labor secretary. I don't think Carr is going anywhere anytime soon, other than the usual attrition that hits every administration's department heads, usually after the midterms. If they're a big political liability like Bondi's become, they're out before the midterms to try to make things
Right.
okay, or the Kristi Noem even more so because of the ICE debacles. So that was hurting their chances in the midterms. But usually people do a couple of years, 3 years. There aren't that many that stick around for the full term. And with Trump officially a lame duck an hour and a half after the polls close on November 6th, I think it'll be a lot less fun to be a department head. And so you'll probably see some more turnover, and it'll be interesting to see how that gets handled, particularly if somehow, and this is now more possible than it was, if somehow the Democrats actually secure a Senate majority. There are now numbers that suggest that could happen, but
And
um,
if this process goes down the way it has for 250 years, I think there's a lot of us who are concerned that it won't.
yeah.
So just getting quickly, you got to fly home. Go through the rest of the issue. Roku reports earnings tomorrow. They've already been a highlight. They're past 100 million.
Past 100 million, baby. They're nine figures.
They've got to deal with Versant for contact. Versant.
Versant. I'm going to say Versant. It is part of our show's traditions. It is Versant. It is a French pronunciation.
I leave that to you or Eurofile.
Oui,
Roku
oui.
is also going to
And
deal
si,
with
si.
Best Buy and Instacart to package ROI information, point of sale stuff for its advertisers. So their stock is way up recently, up over 20%. Interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Also going to look at a new Google broadband technology that's supposed to challenge Starlink and Amazon Leo. So that's what I have.
Okay.
What are you doing?
All right. Well, I'm talking a little bit about why I was up here in San Francisco. This event was part of, it was the first U.S. or non-Italian event of Tectalia, which is for the last 5 years held an annual, very interesting technology conference in one or another city of Italy. Went to the one in Firenze, Florence, to us Americans. A couple of years ago, it was fantastic, spectacular, really interesting stuff, some thought-provoking conversations about, tying together the Renaissance and modern day stuff, showcasing some of what was going on in Italian technology, but also American stuff and connections, and very interesting. And so they're now branching. They probably will have their conference this year in New York, which has a significant Italian population. This event was at the Consul General's headquarters in San Francisco, which is up in Pacific Heights. As I said, that view behind us, they've had it since the 50s. They ain't giving that one up, but it's right above in Pacific Heights above North Beach, where the very large Italian American community of San Francisco traditionally has been. It's the place that spawned Bank of America, the founder of that, Girardelli, quite a few others, Colombo Salami, which I quite like. But Tectalia, and they featured John Riccitiello in a Q&A with Gabriel Schlesinger, who is the founder of Tectalia. Just talking through, John's had a very interesting career. He did a bunch of consumer product stuff, working at companies like Clorox and Pepsi, then shifted into games. For 10 years, he ran Electronic Arts as the CEO. He was a consultant at a crucial time for Oculus before it was bought by Meta. And he ran Unity, the tool maker for games, for 5 years. And, he had a point. I asked him, specifically when the Q&A opened it up to the audience, I said, this game business kind of having some challenges. What do you think about it? I mean, he and his wife bought a Pilates maker called Gras, very, very well-regarded Pilates machine maker, but was having a lot of financial problems, based in
Are these
Philadelphia.
machines?
Yeah, Pilates machines. So they're actually manufacturing, they're bending metal, they're melting it and bending it. And initially they couldn't find Americans to do this. They said, we were hiring people from Afghanistan who knew how to work metal, we're talking about AI and I'm doing like real world stuff for bodies, because he had like a serious accident 25 years ago, really left him kind of broken, and got into Pilates there. It really saved his life. He's got this network of Pilates instructors in cities around the world that he checks in and he's doing all this stuff.
I
But they
didn't
bought,
have it. I'm broken.
yeah, well, you might want to do it. But Gratz is thriving, though. They've had it for a couple of years. He's been working pretty hard. It's really hard to do manufacturing in the United States, with the healthcare costs. He spends $13,000 to $14,000 a year per employee on healthcare. An overseas guy doesn't have to do that because maybe you've got national healthcare in France or whatever. But that being said, they're building expertise. He's using AI to do all the things CEOs do, but this is real world non-AI stuff in terms of building the machines. And they are doing well enough. They've hired about 35 young graduates from this country with mechanical engineering backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. They're building a 300,000 square foot new factory in the Philadelphia area. So they're making it work. And he looks annoyingly good. I mean, he looks great. He's got to be in his early 70s now. But his take on gaming was really interesting. He says, look, typically you need to have a major innovation to really drive explosive growth in the game business. It's a $185 billion business worldwide, but it has been flat the last few years post-pandemic, and lots of issues. Only a handful of major franchises, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, eat up a huge chunk, particularly outside of China, a huge chunk of the engagement that games can attract. Thousands of games are launched every year. They don't do that great. They have a hard time finding an audience. So he said, we're going to need something other than, NFTs and crypto don't make a game good. A game is good and it might use that to make payments, but everybody thought that was the innovation. It's not. And then they thought, oh, we'll take a game and we'll just put it in AR or VR and that'll make cool. But it's like, no, it's just still the same game. It's like, why would you bother to have a VR headset when it's still the same game you can play on your computer or your phone or whatever? So we need some more innovation. We built some bad habits stuff. This is the inevitable outcome of all that. And he also was interesting because, when he was at Unity, he made, I don't call it a mistake. He was trying to shift the way Unity was working from a per seat licensing business to one that was more consumption oriented, where you use more of their assets, you pay more, and their customers freaked out. And eventually he resigned because there was so much opposition. And, now that's the thing. Like Adobe's getting hammered because of his per seat license stuff, and everybody else that has that sort of structure in their software, because AI is all about consumption. So he was a little ahead of the game, and now he's looking here, I'm just bending metal. So interesting to hear from him. Anyway.
Yeah. Did you get invited to this possible event in Florida? I saw the cool kids on LinkedIn.
I don't think it was possible for me to be there, but there is a thing at the Cosm tomorrow. It's a Harry Potter deal. I've got some other things going on. I won't be able to get to that, but an immersive Harry Potter experience. I don't know if I'll be able to make it. Anyway, there's lots going on, but I have to head out. I have checkout in a few minutes. So with this, we should wrap this up. Many thanks, as always, to Media Play News, our partner. I am David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and this podcast, Next TMT Talks, with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel. Like, share, subscribe at NextTM, as in media, t.com. You can get the podcast, you can get the newsletter, which comes out twice a week, and the podcast is out a couple times a week, and we are getting ready for the Stream TV Denver show. We'll be putting out way too many daily episodes, but loving sponsors, loving your contributions. Keep us in mind. If you're in Denver, come see us. Looking forward to talking to you. With all of that, this is David Bloom, over and out.